Hello, welcome to the Facebook Live, another mini harp lesson. Let me just put the Instagram on as well because the live is always on Facebook and on Instagram. So if for any reason you can't watch on one or another, you can still tune in to another one. Let's go live and just give me a second so I'll say hello to everyone. Hello and welcome to another mini harp lesson live. Today's important information is that the materials are available to download. The link is in the description of the live on Facebook and in the bio on Instagram, and you can go there now to download the materials. It might take a while because you need to put your email address and then wait for the password. So if you do it now, we are still going to chat for a bit, and hopefully in a few minutes you will have all the PDFs at hand. The important information is that the PDF with the music of my arrangement of Suo Gân is only available for free until Sunday at 8 p.m. After that, it won't be available for a while because I'm still working on putting together a shop on my website. Hopefully that will be done sometime mid-September. I'm not going to tell you exact date just yet, but once I will know more details, I will surely let you know. So that arrangement will be only available after the Sunday. It will be a couple of weeks before you will be able to get it again. So if you can download it now, because we will be working on that today. Just checking if there's anything else I should let you know. My notes are on the music stand. So no, I think that's everything from the important news. Maybe another organizational note. Today's live, as you may know, is the last one before a short break. That's me going on holiday for a couple of days, and the next live will be on 13th of September. So I think that will be 2 weeks missed, 3 weeks until the next live. And hopefully I will be able to tell you more details about the shop and where to get this arrangement and any others which might appear in the meantime. So try to make the most of today while I'm here. Ask me any questions that you have when it comes to harp playing or instrumental practice, anything. And let's move on to today's topic. You might have seen from the description on Facebook or from my stories before on Instagram that I'm going to be talking about looking beyond the bar line. And what does that mean actually? So I very often observe with students who just start learning the harp that the bar lines, the lines which are separating one bar from another, for those of you who don't read music yet, and happening at quite regular intervals, kind of like words in the text or very short sentences, very often we tend to get stuck in those places. For some reason, that line going across the lines of the music is something which our brains at the beginning reach that, okay, that's the end, I don't need to see what's next, I'll do one thing at a time, which is quite sensible of course, but when we want to progress with music and play piece fluently, that's something which might not be too helpful. And for that reason I've created this arrangement. It was actually on a request of one of my students. I couldn't find an arrangement that would be quite suitable for her level. The arrangements that I was finding were either quite advanced or very simple and with the melody not quite being as prominent as we would like to. And I created this arrangement and I was working on the left hand being sort of a challenge in looking ahead and being able to eventually get that habit of looking at bigger sections, because of course the bar lines will not always happen where a whole section of the piece will stop. Very often we've got longer lines, longer phrases, and the bar lines would have to be very long and probably changing their length to accommodate that, which is why we sort of have to learn to semi-ignore where those bar lines are and look for bigger bits of pieces. Maybe I will play you that piece now and I'll talk a bit more about the recipe on how to work on that, but you'll get to hear the arrangement. and hopefully you will spot what my left hand is doing here and how the fingering also supports that looking forward. Let me just move everything around here. The music stand, the harp, the music stand should be probably here, not to obstruct the view too much, and the harp here. And just a quick remark, this is my left hand, this is my right hand because of the way the camera is there. And this is Suo Gân by traditional melody and arrangement by myself. Here we go. That's the arrangement. It's rather short, but of course you can repeat it a few times. It will still be a very beautiful song and melody. So, to say a few words about this particular arrangement, the range of the strings that you need is not very big. You need the C below middle C, and the highest note is the C above, so 2 octaves. If your harp has that lower C, you should be fine. About the level, I think you will need to play with all 4 fingers. If you're following the method of adding 1 finger at a time, ask your teacher for a fingering that they think would be suitable. You can quite easily Tipex out my fingerings. But I think it's quite useful to be able to use all 4 and use the fingering as written. And other than that, I suppose grade 1, 2, after 1 or 2 years of playing, you will be able to play that piece and even learn it on your own, especially with that practice checklist that you can download. I hope everyone who needs it has downloaded that already. And let's start from the very top. This list has been created especially for that piece, but you will find that only one point refers really specifically to what's happening in the piece. All the other points are quite general, and you might be able to use them for quite a few other pieces, especially the ones where hands do things that are quite different. So I think it's still worth having that. And the first step before looking at music, before looking at playing any notes, will be just looking at the page and looking especially at the fingerings. If you're trying to work towards overcoming that habit of stopping at the bar line, look at the fingerings, check if everything is clear. If any notes are there which don't have fingerings, are you sure that you know which note, which finger is to play that note? In my music, all the fingering is marked in. However, there are some bits where I skip the fingering, for example, when a particular bar is repeating in exactly the same way, then I just write an indication of the first finger and I assume that you remember what you played before, or you can check in the text. Sometimes when I'm having a group of 3 fingers going in one direction, I will just mark 3rd finger, then put a line, and then I assume that you will assume that this is 3, 2, 1 going in a succession. But if you're not sure about any of this, just write them in. It's fine to have all the numbers written in the music as long as you're not overwhelmed by all the markings. Then spot any groups of fingers, any lines that go across the bars, and in this piece you will see quite a lot of them in the left hand, because right hand mostly stays within one bar. It's an example of melodic line which is which phrases, small sections are exactly in one bar. Left hand very often goes across the bars, so see how many fingers do you need to put on. If there are any larger groups, for example 3 fingers going all together, 4 fingers going all together, and sometimes when the first note is in another bar and then the following in the next bar, see how many fingers do you need to put on. I hope you are familiar with the directional placing rule. If not, you can go and watch my lives number 7 and 8, I think, about placing 2 fingers and placing 3 fingers, which will be a good introduction to that topic. But for example, when you look at bar 11 to 12, you will see fingers 2, 3 and 1 and lines overlapping over 3. That means that you're placing only 2 and 3 because 1 will be going in another direction, so putting it on might be confusing for our fingers. You put 2 and 3 on only, play second, place the thumb, play 3, play 1. So it's worth spotting all those beats and knowing what you're going to do there, making sure that you understand. If you're working on another piece and you're still using that checklist and there are no fingerings at all in the music, I think some of you who downloaded the first version of that file, I've included the page with the fingerings and without, but then I thought I'll just leave one with fingerings. But if you find a piece which is completely bare without any fingerings at all, try without playing to come up with some fingerings. Of course, you might change them after you start playing, but if you try to play, you are quite likely to change your fingerings because of that obstacle, because of seeing a bar line and thinking that the fingering is ending. So look out for any groups of notes going in one direction, for example 3 notes going in steps, or going in one direction up or down. See if you can spot them even if they go across the bar line. Then look out for any quick notes, short time values like quavers, semi-quavers. If the piece is quick, also crotchets might be potentially that. And see if you can place these quick notes together, because then you avoid having to jump with very fast notes. And any larger intervals, sometimes even fifths, sometimes octaves, to avoid having to play with second finger and then jumping to another note. See if you can put these 2 notes together so you have a whole group and then you don't have to actively search for that second note. Then the next point of the checklist is quite specific for this piece, Suo Gân, and I advise that you start practicing hands separately, and with most of the pieces I would advise you to do just that. Play left hand on its own, make sure that you're placing correctly, that you're following the lines. Then left hand on its own, in the PDF you will find a checklist of all the bars where you need to pay attention and explained in detail what to look out for, like that bar which I showed you earlier with 2, 3, 1, making sure that second finger plays and only then the thumbs go on. Other bars which might sound obvious, where you have fingering like 1 thumb, 1 back, 2 and 1, so just 1, 2, 1. That might feel very obvious with the left hand only, but with the hands together you need to be really aware that you're playing the thumb, you're putting it back on the same string, you play the second finger, you come off, you play the thumb, you come off. Believe it or not, when you put hands together in that piece, those fingers might do quite funny things here and you will need to keep them in check. So this all is written out in the PDF, anything to watch out in the left hand. And then when you start putting hands together, that's where you need to be really focused and vigilant. So work in small sections, not more than 2 bars at a time, even 1.5 bar, half a bar sometimes, and really focus on that place. Don't just whiz through, try to get it right, or at least know what will be the next step next time you come back to practice. Then look ahead, and if one hand is off the strings, for example, if your right hand has played that first group, try to put it on as soon as you come off for the next note, because then your other hand will be free to do other things and you won't end up in that panic mode where both hands are suddenly off the strings and you have to search for both of them, finding where they need to go. If something doesn't work, and you might see that there will be quite a tricky bit all the way already from the beginning. Ask yourself a few questions to see what exactly is the problem. So first question is, which hand do you think is problematic? And sometimes it may feel that your right hand is lost, but actually that might be because of something that the left hand has done or undone. So look into that in quite a lot of detail. Which hand is it that is causing the problem? I think with Suo Gân, with this arrangement, in 90% of the cases it will be left hand, which will be more challenging, but try to check. Then what exactly is the problem again? Which finger? Is it the case of finger being late? For example, you have played that second finger and you were supposed to put it back, but instead you played the thumb and came off, and then you have to search again for that second finger. That would be the case of placing late or not placing at all, and in that case you have to think really hard to yourself when you're playing the right hand that second finger is coming back. I'll try to find that one excerpt in the piece when that happens. Actually, it's right at the beginning between bars 1 and 2. Left hand starts playing at the last note of bar 1. Right hand is to prepare to play, and they both have 1 and 2 on, but they go quite against each other. So that goes left hand playing the thumb, then left hand is supposed to play second finger, right hand is supposed to play the thumb. So I'm putting the thumb back and play opposite fingers. Then left hand needs to remember to come off completely here, even though right hand has more notes, and only then coming off. So in that bit you have to really think about that thumb coming back, second not coming back, second coming off, and then the whole hand coming off without second finger coming on. And you might want to stop, even if that means breaking the rhythm, just to make sure that you've got that time to really think is what your finger wants to do, because they will want to do something on autopilot. Is that what you really need to do in that place? Then make sure that the other hand doesn't play too much, and also make sure that you're not playing too much of the piece before. We often get carried away and we think, oh, I need to go all the way to the beginning of the previous bar to make sure that it all makes sense in the context. But at the beginning, try to really locate that. Usually it will be 1 or 2 notes, that's the problem. And then, even if the right hand has something which overlaps with the left hand, get rid of that and just focus on that problematic spot and what happens in the other hand when you played that. In the PDF you will find an example of me circling one bit of the music, taking a bit of the left hand, a bit of the right hand, and you might want to cover your music in circles like that. Pick 1, 2, 3 circles and work on them, and only then the next step will be adding some more sections. When I work on some really big and complex pieces, usually my music is all covered in circles like that, which are sort of a shape of an egg laid on one side. They are not like that. They take a bit of one hand, a bit of the other hand, skipping some of the things that would just complicate things unnecessarily and not help to work on the spot. Just try to be really clever thinking about the tackling of the problems and your strategy there. Then, once you feel a bit more confident, you might notice that you don't need as much thinking time, but that doesn't mean that the tempo should be faster. Try to keep it really slow, and if you feel that you can take less time to move between one finger to another, instead try to get the rhythm right. You will need to have it quite slow, because if you needed some time to think about before, slow tempo will keep that amount of time still there. So try to get the correct rhythm right, however slow will that need to be. And then after your all small sections can be played in the correct rhythm and without fingers doing something that you don't want them to do, you can start putting bigger sections together. With those bigger sections, you will find that there were beats which you didn't really go through with hands together if you were working on separate sections. So connecting them together will need asking again the same questions. What exactly is the problem? Which hand is causing the problem? You can basically go back to the point number 4 in the checklist and ask yourself all these questions. Then decide when you need to start playing, which group of notes from which hand to include, and going for the smallest possible spot. And then once you can play that really small spot correctly at least 3 times, then you can add a little bit more, and I would recommend that you start adding things from before. After is usually very easy, but adding things before is quite tricky for our brain and will give you much more solid knowledge of that piece. Then once you can play that combined section 3 times correctly, you can add more groups of fingers before or after that place. And one last thing, which last but not least, be kind to yourself. And with a piece like that, you might notice that even if you've done a lot of good work in one day, the next day you come and you start practicing and you want to move on to point 6 or 5 on the list, and you just can't go past the really small bits. That will take some time, so be very patient and understanding for yourself, and just go back to the list. It's not something that you will tick off and just go and never come back again. It's everyday work. It takes a lot of time to get those connections really drawn in your brain, if I can use that word. I'll just have a quick look at your comments, because I'm seeing some comments from today. Hello from Netherlands. Hello from Scotland. I hope you were aware of the time difference between Scotland, UK and Netherlands, and you were watching at 12 Dutch time. And then thank you very much for all the thumbs up and all the hellos. Really good to see you all here. Let me know if you have any questions, and let me know if you think there is something you would like to have added to that, if there's anything that particularly bothers you. And I'm just wondering, out of curiosity, do you notice that problem, that that the places where you tend to get stuck are often either on the bar line, or also, which is even worse, at the end of the line where you have to jump to the next line? Did you ever notice some regularity in that? Because sometimes we practice pieces and we think, oh, I'm getting stuck here, but we don't quite notice that the bar line, just the very psychological barrier for the brain, might be the problem. I think that's all for today. Just to remind you all who haven't downloaded the PDFs yet, that the checklist will be there forever, for as long as my website is on. The links are again in the bio and in the description. The Suo Gân hour, I'll explain in a second. Suo Gân is only available until Sunday 8 p.m. to download from where all the other materials are. Later it will be available to buy from my shop, which will be hopefully live sometime mid-September, towards the end of September. Next live is on 13th of September, and I'm hoping to be able to give you some more information then. And why did I suddenly was not able to pronounce the word? I was playing with a Welsh harpist, hello, and she told me that actually the U in the Suo Gân should be pronounced in this word as I, not you. And that's something that I'm definitely not used to, so it should be something like Suo Gân. If there are any Welsh watchers here, tell me if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So that's just a quick note. And if there are no more questions, I thought I'll just tell you one more thing about this piece. As you may see, I haven't included any dynamics at all in this music. First, because it's a traditional piece and we don't really have any original that would include any dynamics at all. And second, because I think it's such a beautiful and simple tune that everyone will find their own way and will feel how it should sound differently. So it's absolutely up to you how you want to play that. I quite like being given that freedom from an arranger or composer, so I thought I'll give that to you. For those interested, you might want to go and have a look at the lyrics for Suo Gân. It's a lullaby. It's a very simple lullaby, but especially this week it has been really moving for me. It's saying a lot about the mother holding the baby in her arms and how nothing bad can come to them and no harm can come to them because they are safe, and there might be leaves rattling in the wind and other things which are not harmful, but even if the baby is scared, the mother is still there. And yeah, it was quite a week this week, saying some goodbyes and losing friends. And that piece, I planned to play it already a while before everything happened, but it came at a time where it just feels so appropriate that it's really sad actually. So before I start crying here or saying more sad things, I just hope you are all well and that your families and friends are all well, and yeah, just wishing you all the best. I always try to think that there is sunshine after the rain, that there is always the next day, and try to make the most of it. Finishing a bit of a sad note. I didn't mean to do it like that with the last one before the break. So that's it, and you can go and practice and download the pieces. I will be reminding you a lot that there is a limit on how long the music is available, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you after a break on 13th of September. Take care until then, and looking forward to seeing you again.